Are you tired of being told what to think and how to act? Well, you are not alone. In case you haven't realized it, you have an internal GPS. It knows all you need to know about how to live your life. So it's about time you stopped letting the media and the government tell you what is true for you. In fact, it is exactly that time. It's time to think for yourself. And here to make sure you're doing just that is your host, mediator, author, and lawyer, Carol Gold.
Hi, it's Sunday, June 30th. I'm Carol Gold, and welcome to Think for Yourself. To do a podcast today and talk about anything other than the presidential debate that took place this week is kind of like ignoring the elephant in the room. Because clearly it was, at least politically, the biggest story of this past week. So I'm not going to be any different in that regard. I want to talk about it. Maybe I want to talk about it in ways you haven't heard, but nonetheless, I'm going to talk about it. Yesterday, I happened to be speaking with a neighbor of mine who is a really good-hearted person, incredibly good-hearted, kind, happens to be a Democrat, no inconsistency there necessarily. And I asked him, hey, did you watch the debate? And he said, I did. And I said, what did you think? And he said, well, I think Biden had a cold, and the lies, the amount of lies that Trump told were just, over the top. And when he said that, I thought to myself, we're in trouble. We're really in trouble. We're not in trouble because of Biden or Trump. We're not in trouble because of what political party you happen to belong to. We're in trouble because I don't think we either believe our eyes anymore, our eyes and our ears, or we've lost the ability to discern the truth of what we're looking at. So if you put aside your politics, regardless of which one of those candidates or which party you're aligned with, and you just look at the face level, the most superficial level of presentation, how in the world can anyone have watched that and think that Joe Biden is anything other than a dementia patient and totally incapable, not of being the president, not of making presidential decisions, not of leading the country, but of tasked with carrying the briefcase that holds the nuclear codes when we are where we are with Russia and we are where we are in the Middle East? How is that possible that you could watch a man who could not speak well, who could not think well, who could not communicate effectively, whose physical persona locked up, froze up at times with, quite honestly, terrifying looks on his face, looks of either confusion or looks of someone who's totally disconnected from reality? This is what disturbs me most about where we are as a culture, more so even as a nation, but as a culture. And I say that because nationally, right, we're a political entity. A nation is a political entity. But the makeup of our nation is cultural. Who we are, what we value, what we prioritize. I, again, can't understand how any person who thinks critically, but I don't even think you have to go that far as being a critical thinker. I don't think you have to be trained in critical thought in order to know when someone is so infirm that they're borderline unable to function. So infirm that getting off the stage, in case you didn't watch the videos that were available till the very end, after the debate completed, but before the candidates were off the stage. Trump walked off the stage by himself. He just walked off the stage into the wings. Biden had to be helped off the stage, down the 3 steps of the front of the stage, by Jill Biden, who literally had to take his hand and help him go down the steps, and watching him was painful as well. I'm at a complete loss to understand why people would try to justify and rationalize and go so far in some cases as to lie and say, well, he wasn't at his best. You know, past President Obama, former President Obama came out and said, yeah, we've all had bad debate nights. That wasn't a bad debate night. That was finally the curtain being lifted, the mask being taken off, the reality of what many news outlets have been saying for a very long time, which is that this man has been in a state of deterioration, physical and mental, for quite some time. And again, I would not waste your time talking about his politics, which are very different than mine, or his value system, which is very different than mine, because at this juncture, I don't really think that's the issue. I don't think the issue is what do you think of his policies at this juncture. Again, I reference the nuclear codes. It's about his competency. It's about his ability to reason. It's about his ability to negotiate and discuss with foreign leaders. Now, if in reality he's not doing any of that, because if in reality the people who are around him have been very well aware for a very long time that this is his physical and mental and emotional state of being, and they have taken care of that by removing those kinds of pressures and decisions from him, then we have another problem, don't we? Because then we have unelected people, whoever they may be, bureaucrats or private citizens, I don't even know at this point, who may be making decisions on behalf of a country who didn't elect them to make those decisions. So either way, this is not a good situation. And if by some chance, and I don't think this is the case, his vice president, Kamala Harris, is making those decisions, well then it ought to be formalized that he's removed from office if he doesn't agree to leave voluntarily. You invoke the 25th Amendment, you call together the cabinet, as Congressman Chip Roy has sent a letter to Kamala Harris requesting that she convene the cabinet members and take a poll on invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office for his incapacity. If that's what's really going on, if she's making the decisions, and again, I qualify it by saying I don't think it's her. I watched an old video clip of Barack Obama after he left office, and I watched it yesterday. And he's interviewed, and the interviewer asks him, would you like a third term? Would you want a third term? And he said something eerily prescient, I think. He said, would I like a third term? Well, I guess if I could have someone standing in for me who had an earpiece in, who I could be sitting in my basement somewhere in comfortable clothes and telling them what to say, with them standing up for me, yeah, I guess I would. That's how I'd want a third term. Now, I may not have quoted him every single verb and every single adjective correctly, but trust me, that is in fact the gist of what he said. That's eerily disturbing, because if you watched the debate on 2, maybe 3 occasions, 2 for sure, Joe Biden reached up to his right ear and clearly repositioned an earpiece. Now, I'm unaware that he wears hearing aids. I've never heard that anywhere. So what was he readjusting in his ear? And is in fact the person who's making those decisions Barack Obama? Or was someone speaking in his ear on behalf of Barack Obama or anyone else who might inappropriately and illegally be executing the powers of the office of the President of the United States? There's something telling about millions of people who will continue, for the sake of politics, for the sake of the party, for the sake of the Democrats, who will continue to advocate for, support, and justify Joe Biden continuing to be the Democratic nominee in November. Now, if this were purely about politics, I'd say to you, oh, I hope he remains the candidate, because there's a no-brainer there who wins that election if it comes down to he and Donald Trump. But it isn't about politics. And actually, if I am or I was a Trump supporter, I wouldn't be arguing so strongly that Joe Biden ought to be removed under the 25th Amendment if he won't leave voluntarily. I would want him to stay. So my position here and what I'm sharing with you is not about politics at all. It's about the well-being and health of a nation. It's about national security. It's about honesty and integrity in governance. It's about common sense. It's about a lot of things, but it's not about politics. I'm not sure if I can make a direct connection between what I just spoke about and something I watched this morning. But I'm going to bring up the latter, what I watched this morning, mainly because I think in the end, there is a common theme. So while the transition may seem a little odd, bear with me. I watched this morning a video of the recipients of what I believe is the National Debate Championship. Has to do with, I think it was high school age or post-high school age, right before freshman college age bracket that competes for the National Championship of Debating. The two young women who won the trophy were interviewed by a local television station. And they're both young black women, probably 18 years old, maybe 19 at the most. And there were clips in between the interview itself of the presentations that the young women made at the actual debate. And what is stunning about their presentation and the fact that they won is that, how can I put this? They spoke so fast that they were almost incoherent, but more importantly, they continued to use, now I'm going to say the N-word for the moment. They continued to use the N-word throughout their presentation. National Debate Champions. It was actually disgusting and appalling. And at the same time, there was an interview with a young Asian American male who, I think he has a 4.97 GPA, and he got, I don't know the top score now in SATs, but he had something like 3 points or 5 points short of a perfect SAT score. And he's been rejected from every single college. He's captain of the soccer team, I think. He was captain of the debate team. He plays a band instrument. He had all these extracurricular activities. He was rejected from Harvard, Princeton, Yale, every school he applied to because he's Asian American. And they are a class now specifically targeted as having been too preferentially treated. And so we've turned away, every Ivy League school has turned away the most talented, competent young man in order to accept applications from students of color who have absolutely, to be kind, diminished qualifications. Now, a minute ago, I said I'm going to use the N-word here because, right, it's not okay to use the N-word. You're not allowed to use that word. Unless, of course, you're black. And if you're black, you're allowed to say the N-word. And my daughter, who is Asian, this morning and I had a conversation. And in that conversation, I said to her, why is it okay for them to use the word nigger? And she said, Mom, oh my God, don't use that word. I said, what do you mean don't use that word? I'm quoting the girl in the debate. I'm telling you what she said. I'm not using the word myself. And she said, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to use the word. I said, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. If I use it to demean a black person, that's definitely not okay. But if a black person uses it in a public setting and I'm quoting that person, what's wrong with my using the word, quoting the black person who used the word? And she said, it's just not accepted. And I said, oh, it's not accepted. I said, well, guess what? There was a time when killing Jews in Germany was accepted and you didn't go against it. There was a time in this country when slavery was accepted and you didn't go against it. I don't go along to get along. I don't believe in that. I believe that when something is wrong, you say it's wrong. And I thought very hard to try to give her an example of how absurd it was. And she said, I don't know why. They can say it to one another, but you know, a white person or an Asian, nobody should say it. And I said, Zoe, that's her name, my daughter's name. I said, Zoe, you're Chinese. You have a Chinese friend. If you and your Chinese friend call each other a chink, would that be okay? And then if I called you a chink because I'm white, it wouldn't be okay? How absurd is that? And I think she got that. Because that's exactly what this is. It's the same thing. The word isn't okay no matter when it's used. The N-word. It's not okay no matter what it's used. But when you allow people to use it and you censor other people and condemn them for not using it, then you're a hypocrite. And the policy is a hypocrite. And when you allow hypocritical behavior, when you, in essence, the 14th Amendment is equal protection, right? It's the same standard applied to people across the board. And when you violate that same standard, then you have violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. It's a principle that applies to this conversation or this discussion I'm having with my microphone, meaning with you. If it's okay for some people to use the word and not okay for other people to use the word, then the concept of equality or equal protection stretched a bit, right? Because it's not necessarily about protection, but it is about equality. It is about the word equal. There's an absurdity to that and a hypocrisy to that begins to tear at the fabric of the society. And if you let it go on long enough, and if you bow to it enough, and if you turn a blind eye to it enough because it's woke or it's what's happening in the times, but you know it's wrong even in the time in which you live. You know that it would be wrong historically and it would be wrong in the future because it simply defies common sense and it treats people differently who behave in the same way. It's not okay. It's not okay. So, how do I draw the two together? How do I draw together Joe Biden's dementia and the hypocrisy of allowing black people to use a word that white people aren't allowed to use about black people? I draw it together because both defy common sense. And when you defy common sense and you allow reality to be so manipulated and to be so twisted and to be so deceiving as to call truth lie and lie truth, then that's the death knell of a culture. And we better be darn careful, because I hear something ringing in the background. Thanks for listening. I'm Carol Gold. I'll be back here again next Sunday, and until I am, have a happy 4th of July coming up this week, and by all means, please think for yourself.
Carol thanks you for spending your valuable time with her. It is her mission to empower you to remember how smart and capable you are. Be sure to check out Carol's website, carolgold.com. That's Carol with an E, gold.com. Please leave a review and subscribe here so you'll be alerted to Carol's next podcast. Until then, above all else, remember, it's time to think for yourself.